Radio Redux, where we kindle the power of the spoken word
populate the theater of your imagination.
Tonight's presentation would not be possible without the help of Red Room, our volunteers at Red Room, the Ripplemaker Foundation, and ICRT-FM in no particular order, but all of these people have done it along with it. That's Retsky. Here's our show. Dear listeners, this is Ruth Giordano for Red Room Radio Redux. Our source for tonight's show is a short story called The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. And a quick note, if any of you are familiar with the recent Hollywood film of the same name, just forget it for a few minutes. The fact is, tonight you will hear the words of the story as they were written by James Thurber, famed American writer, in 1939. Our intrepid performer this evening you've met already. His name is Thomas Bellmore. And lastly, I just have to mention, this is the first time we've done this in front of a live audience. Thank you. Here we go. Okay, get comfy, folks. Open your ears. And the gateway.
She seemed grossly unfamiliar, like a strange woman who had yelled at him from a crowd. "You were up to 55. You know how I don't like to go more than 40. You were up to 55. Walter Mitty drove on toward Waterbury in silence. The roaring of the SN 202 through the worst storm in 20 years of Navy flying, fading in the remote, intimate airways of his mind. "You're tensed up again. It's one of your days. I wish you'd let Dr. Renshaw look you over." Walter Mitty stopped the car in front of the building where his wife went to have her hair done. "Remember to get those overshoes while I'm having my hair done." "I don't need overshoes," said Mitty. She put her mirror back in her bag. "We've been all through that. You're not a young man any longer." He raced the engine a little. "Why don't you wear your gloves? Have you lost your gloves?" Walter Mitty reached in a pocket and brought out the gloves. He put them on. But after she had turned and gone into the building, and he had driven onto a red light, he took them off again. "Pick it up, brother!" snapped a cop as the light changed, and Mitty hastily pulled on his gloves and lurched ahead. He drove around the streets aimlessly for a time and then drove past the hospital on his way to the parking lot. "It's the millionaire banker, Wellington Macmillan," said the pretty nurse. "Yes," said Walter Mitty, removing his gloves slowly. "Who has the case?" "Dr. Renshaw. But there are two specialists here. Dr. Remington from New York and Dr. Pritchard Mitford from London." He flew over. A door opened down a long, cool corridor, and Dr. Renshaw came out. He looked distraught and haggard. "Hello, Mitty," he said. "We're having the devil's own time with Macmillan, the millionaire banker and personal friend of Roosevelt. Obstruosis of the ductal tract. Tertiary. Won't you take a look at him?" "Glad to," said Mitty. In the operating room, there were whispered introductions. "Dr. Remington, Dr. Mitty, Dr. Pritchard Mitford, this is Dr. Mitty." "I've read your book on streptothrombosis," said Dr. Pritchard Mitford. "A brilliant performance, sir, if I do say so myself." "Thank you," said Walter Mitty. "Didn't know you were in the States, Mitty," said Remington. "It's a futile enterprise bringing Mitford and me up here for a tertiary." "Yeah, you're very kind," said Mitty. A huge, complicated machine connected to the operating table with many tubes and wires began at this moment to go pocket. "The newest nesticizer is giving way," shouted an intern. "There's no one in the East who knows how to fix it." "Quiet, man," said Mitty. He sprang to the machine, which was now going quick, quick. He began fingering delicately at a row of glistening dials. "Give me a fountain pen," he snapped. Someone handed him a fountain pen. He pulled a faulty piston out of the machine and inserted the pen in its place. "That will hold for 10 minutes, he said. "Get on with the operation." A nurse hurried over and whispered to Dr. Renshaw, and Mitty saw the man turn pale. "Oh, God, choreopsis set in," said Renshaw nervously. "Want to take over, Mitty?" Mitty looked at him and the grave, uncertain faces of the two great specialists. "If you wish," he said. They slipped a white gown on him. He adjusted a mask and drew on thin gloves. Nurses handed him shining... "Back it up, Mac! Look out for that Buick!" Walter Mitty jammed on the brakes. "Wrong lane, Mac," said the parking lot attendant, looking closely at Mitty. "Gee, yeah," muttered Mitty. He began cautiously to back out of the lane marked exit only. "Leave her sit there. I'll put her away." Mitty got out of the car. "Hey! Better leave the key." "Oh," said Mitty, handing the man the ignition key. The attendant vaulted into the car, backed it up with insolent skill, and put it where it belonged. "They're so damn cocky," thought Walter Mitty, walking along Main Street. "They think they know everything." One winter he had tried to take the snow chains off of his tires outside New Milford, and he got them wound around the axles. A man had to come out in a wrecking car and unwind them, a young, grinning garageman. Since then, Mrs. Mitty always made him drive to a garage to have the chains taken off. The next time, he thought, "I'll wear my right arm in a sling. They won't grin at me then. I'll have my right arm in a sling, and they'll see I couldn't possibly take the tires off myself." He kicked at the slush and snow on the sidewalk. "Overshoes," he said to himself, and he began looking for a shoe store. When he came out into the street again, with the overshoes in a box under his arm, Walter Mitty began to wonder what the other thing was his wife had told him to get. She had told him twice before they set out from their house in Waterbury. In a way, he hated these weekly trips to town. He was always getting something wrong. Kleenex, he thought. Squibs. Razor blades. No. Oh, toothpaste. Toothbrush. Bicarbonate. Carborundum. Initiative and referendum? He gave it up. But she would remember it. "Where's the what's-its-name?" she would ask. "Don't tell me you forgot the what's-its-name." A newsboy went by shouting something about the Waterbury trial. "Read about the Waterbury trial. Big trial in Waterbury." "Perhaps this will refresh your memory." The district attorney suddenly thrust a heavy automatic at the quiet figure on the witness stand. "Have you ever seen this before?" Walter Mitty took the gun and examined it expertly. "This is my Webley Vickers spy at 5080, he said calmly. An excited buzz ran around the courtroom. The judge rapped for order. "I'm given to understand you're a crack shot with any sort of firearm," said the district attorney insinuatingly. "Objection!" shouted Mitty's attorney. "We have shown that the defendant could not have fired the shot. We have shown that he wore his right arm in a sling on the night of the 14th of July. Walter Mitty raised his hand briefly, and the bickering attorneys stilled. "With any known make of gun," he said evenly, "I could have killed Gregory Fitzhurst at 300 feet with my left hand." Pandemonium broke loose in the courtroom. A woman's scream rose above the bedlam. It was a female witness for the defense. For no apparent reason, The district attorney was accosting her. The lovely, dark-haired girl sought protection in Walter Mitty's arms. The district attorney struck at her savagely. Without rising from his chair, Mitty let the man have it on the point of the chin. "You miserable cur!" "Puppy biscuit," said Walter Mitty. He stopped walking, and the buildings of Waterbury rose out of the misty courtroom and surrounded him again. A woman who was passing by laughed. "Oh, God, he said puppy biscuit," she said to her companion. "That man said puppy biscuit to himself." Walter Mitty hurried on. He went into an A&P. Not the first one he came to, but a smaller one farther up the street. I want a biscuit for some small young dogs," he said to the clerk. "Any special brand, sir?" The greatest pistol shot in the world thought a moment. It says puppy," said Walter Mitty scornfully. He took one last drag on his cigarette and snapped it away. Then, with that faint, fleeting smile playing about his lips, he faced the firing squad. Erect and emotionless, proud and disdainful, Walter Mitty, the undefeated, inscrutable to the last.